Hallo iedereen, leuk dat jullie Go Youth of Animo Juventud net hebben gezien van Carlos Armella. Ik heb hem hier bij mij, wel niet helemaal bij mij, want hij zit in Mexico en ik zit hier in België. Maar we hebben de eer om aan Carlos een paar vragen te stellen over Go Youth. En als het goed is, hebben jullie die nu ook net bekeken. En anders zou ik zeggen, bekijk hem zeker, want het is een hele vrolijke, leuke film. Hello, Carlos. Nice to have you here and to be able to speak with you. It's really early in the morning in Mexico, I think. Where exactly are you?
I'm in Mexico City. It's okay. Early. It's early, but it's not that bad. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. I wanted to ask you, is this your first film in which teenagers play the main role?
I'm trying to think. I think it is. I mean, I've done documentaries with teenagers involved. You know, I can think of my last documentary called Banda, which is about these teenage musicians in Oaxaca. So it's been there, the subject of teenagers and adolescents and all that, but it's the first time I dealt with it in a fiction narrative.
And was it because of your former documentary that you got the idea to put them central?
No. Actually, no. It happened. I think one right after the other. I mean, I would say almost at the same time. I started writing Go Youth. And I already had the idea to make this teenage film or a film about teenagers. And then I was invited to do this documentary called Banda. So in a way, it kind of worked because I was getting my mind into this adolescent mind, and I got to work with these young kids from a very different kind of circumstance and setting. The documentary takes place in a very small community in Oaxaca, and I wanted to do a film about teenagers in a big city like the one where I grew up.
Where did you grow up?
Mexico City.
It was in Mexico City that you grew up as well. All right. What makes teenagers so interesting to you, or adolescents?
I think everything. I think everything about them is interesting. I always hear when growing up, becoming an adult, becoming a father, when you speak, when I speak to people of my generation, a lot of them, when we recollect our teenage years, they usually say, oh, adolescence, that's a horrible time. I'm so glad it's over. I'm so glad it only lasts for a few years. And they say it with this sort of bitter look at their past.
Maybe
And
also a little bit of jealousy, no?
I don't know, but I just, whenever I think about my adolescence, I think it was beautiful. I mean, and I was, it was very dramatic. It was very depressive at times. It was very hard, of course. I had a lot of anger and a lot of fears and a lot of everything, but it was also beautiful, having all these feelings and all these emotions so alive. And I just wanted to sort of reconnect with that, because you realize when you grow up that once it's gone, and you mature and you see the world in a different way. But I just wanted to see it in that beautiful way, and with all its troubles and everything, but just with a kind look at
and showing young people experiencing things for the first time. That I found really beautiful in your film as well.
Yes, I mean, to me, it's about, I mean, of course, it's about discovering the world and growing up, and it's as they call it, it's a coming of age. But at the same time, I wanted to celebrate the adolescence of these characters. I didn't want them growing into adults by the end of the film. I wanted them to stay teenagers
Yeah.
by the end of the film. And of course they move on, you know, they go through this event which probably will not change their lives, but they will be memorable moments in their lives for sure. And some of them will move on, like the character of the taxi driver, Daniel, and into a more adult world. But at the same time, I wanted them to stay teenager, to stay like teenagers, because in a way, that's how I feel, you know?
Okay.
When I
Did
think
you still
about my
feel like being a teenager?
well, I think that's why I found it so beautiful to speak about these characters, because I reconnected with my inner teenager, and that was very nice. And I think people, and I hope people, when they watch the film, they recollect some of those emotions and feel like, oh, I did have a lot of nice, beautiful, intense moments in my adolescence.
Are there some things that you put of yourself in the four main characters?
I wasn't
How
aware
many
of it.
toilets did you have to clean, Carlos?
I didn't have to clean toilets, but you do go, you know, you get punished at school and that kind of thing. I wasn't aware of how personal it was when I was writing it. Actually, as the characters started developing in my mind, I saw them as characters. I didn't quite. I just wanted to tell their stories, not my story. Then, of course, when you have the script ready and you look at it from a distance and you reconnect things and oh, maybe I want to talk about that because I felt a bit like that when I went through such and such, you know. And of course there are things, and people ask me, you know, which of the characters do you most relate to?
Yeah.
And I think in a way I do relate to all of them, you know. There's a bit of me in all of them. And even, you know, the character of Martin, the graffiti painter, he does come from a very different background and a very different kind of education than mine. I would say I'm much closer to Pedro in that sense, in the background. But there are many of his fears, his emotions, I would even call it like self-hate, you know. I think that I can relate to. I went through that kind of thing as well. You know, the character of Martin is a kid who falls in love, but it's so insecure and he sort of sees down to himself. You know, that he doesn't feel worthy of being loved.
There's a low self-esteem about the person.
He had very low self-esteem, and I did go through very low self-esteem moments in my life, you know. So I do relate a lot to that character as well, even though the background. But it's you know, it's the way in which artists, filmmakers, writers, that's how we work. We create characters, we create different circumstances, like so we can hide behind the curtain. And I realized after writing all these characters, and probably up to the moment when I finally started watching the film finished, you know, in the editing room, that I realized how much of me there was in the film. And still, when I get to talk about the film, I do sometimes still catch myself connecting with some of the things that I wasn't aware of.
Interesting. One thing I asked myself as well, because I speak Spanish, and I'm sure that some people who've seen the film speak Spanish as well, but they're the youth in Mexico, they have a lot of different or specific things in language, specific how they say it, especially this age, and everything in language, especially that age, changes rapidly. So words that were in 5 years ago are out right now. How difficult was that? Like picking the language and picking up on the specific things adolescents talk about or with?
I think it's, of course, it's not easy if you are an adult trying to get into a conversation with teenagers. But
because They
because
leave
it's
out
a
a bit.
new, and it's a new slang, you know.
Yeah,
They have a new language, they have a new slang. And when I think about my teenage years, I had my own slang, you know, and we each do. But you do realize when you listen to teenage conversations now that there are words that I didn't use that word, you know.
Mhm.
And why are they not using this other word, you know? Or when you speak to them, you say something that they don't get you because you're using your words, which you
Your
believe
slang, yeah.
are very cool and everything, but you're not. I mean, you're old school, you're old fashioned. And but I was aware that I, as a grown up, I cannot, I wouldn't be able to speak like teenagers do these days.
Mhm,
And just like you said, this is something that changes, you know, every
mhm,
5, 10 years, you know, there is
mhm.
new ways of speaking, especially now in this digital era, you know, when there's
Yeah.
so many new words coming from this environment.
Mhm.
So it's like now we're zooming, you know, it's like in
Yeah.
my time, I mean, there was no zooming in back
They
then.
say zooming in Spanish as well.
Yeah,
Ah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. In Dutch,
So
it's zoomen, yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, so I was aware of that, and I had it very clear in my mind that when we get into the pre-production, when we selected our cast, and we would need some time to make a workshop, you know, like an acting workshop, you know, to get, also because they were kids, you know, and well, some of them were a bit older, but some of them were still teenagers.
Mhm,
And I was aware that we needed to do a workshop to get them into the acting method and the communication between them. And we did this for about 2 months, several times a week. And I use that time to listen to them, to
mhm,
see how they speak. Just let them improvise, let them be, and listen to them. And some of that I would apply to the script,
mhm,
but some of it I would just leave the dialogue in the script like very neutral,
mhm.
knowing that by the time we went on set, I would let them adapt it to their own words.
Yeah.
So that's how we did it. And there was there's a very funny anecdote from the first day of shooting.
Mhm.
The first scene we did is the one where Dulce and her friends are out in the patio, you know, watching the
Yeah,
the, the
cool. Yeah.
basketball class
Yeah.
going on, and they're speaking all these very rude things and very and so at one point we were rehearsing a scene that a part of this of the dialogue that we were going to shoot next, and one of the girls, the one with the braids in her hair, so we rehearsed it, and then sorry, and then I said, okay, we're ready, let's bring camera, let's get ready to shoot it. And I turned my back, and she said something also very rude, not at me, but about her character. Like, she
Okay.
improvised something at that moment, but knowing that I had turned my back, knowing that I was sort of moving away,
Not
but
listening.
I heard it, and I immediately turned around and I told her, "What did you just say?" And she, of course, believed that I was gonna, scold her, to, reprimand her for something, because her words were very rude, and and I said, "What did you say?" And she said, "No, no, nothing." She was so embarrassed. And I said, "No, yes, please tell me. What did you say?" "No, no, no. Sorry, sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just playing." I said, "I know you were playing. Just tell me what you said again." So she repeated it, and I said, "That's exactly what I wanted to say." In So we kept that dialogue, because and this happened on the first day of shooting, and I realized this is how I want to work with them.
Mhm.
I want them to feel, and of course they were getting to know me as well, so and getting to know my method and everything. So that, I guess, sort of opened the door for them to feel more free to
Mhm.
improvise, to add their own words,
Mhm.
to get into the characters and be the characters and speak with their own words. So that was very cool, and that
Mhm.
sort of established the way we worked, and it continued as we moved on shooting the rest of the stories and with the rest of the actors. So that was, I mean, that was, and it also happened with the way they talk, the way they walk, the way they do everything, that I was aware that I cannot impose it on them, because then they're gonna be like little adults. Yeah,
Yeah,
very stiff.
exactly.
So, and I said, so I just wanted them to be themselves.
Mhm. How did you find the four main characters? How were the auditions? How did everything go?
I was, I knew that if looking for teenage actors
Mhm.
in Mexico, at least, I think any casting director would first go to television or soap operas and or musical theater, which is where a lot of young kids start
Mhm.
acting
Yeah.
and standing out. But I wanted to completely move away from that, because you usually get this very beautiful model like,
Little stars, or
yes,
yeah.
and uh, and what we in Latin America call aspirational Latinos, which
Mhm.
is ones that you see in TV commercials, all very
Mhm.
beautiful. Sometimes they have dark skin, but very light, dark, and very fine features and all that. So I wanted to step away from that, because I just felt that Mexico is such a mixed race that we have, that I wanted to find faces that really anyone could identify with, that you could feel that this is, oh, he looks just like the kid, from the store, or from the taxi, or from the subway or whatever. So we started looking in different places. So not only through casting agencies, but even through Facebook, we did some research, and we looked in many different places, and so some of them. So we found them in different places. A few of them had, of course, done some acting work, like the kid who plays Pedro, Iñaki. He had done a bit of television.
Mhm.
Uh, but apart from him, the rest of them had done very little, somewhere in small local acting groups.
Yeah.
So they just felt very natural, and I was very aware of that. I was looking for that kind of face, but also memorable faces. I wanted these kids. Probably in Belgium, you would see any Mexican actor, and it's the first time you see them. But in Mexico, I wanted the audiences from Mexico to not have seen them before, or at least not recognize them immediately,
Mhm. From
but
another role.
they would be so memorable that if they do something later on in their lives, you would identify them for this film.
Yeah.
So and I just, like, going through lots and lots and lots of videos, these faces would just stay in my mind. I would, or something would stand out from their faces. I was, oh, he has such a particular face, like the kid who plays Daniel. He immediately, his name is Mario, and the first time I saw him, I had imagined that character to be with very dark skin.
Mhm.
Uh, but when I saw him, when I saw Mario, I just
Yeah, he's actually
saw his
very
face,
light.
and there was something so magnetic
Yeah.
about his face,
Yeah.
but his skin was very, very light.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he would
Yeah.
blush, he would get all
Yeah.
red.
Yeah.
And so there was something so magnetic that I think,
Mhm.
I love his face. I love the way he looks. I could see him as a character, but still I kept looking and looking and looking. But I think I knew it from the first moment that I would go back to him and select
Yeah.
him.
You
And
believe him as well when he's like very brave in the taxi. It's like, yeah, go Daniel. Yeah.
yeah, there was, I mean, so much of him, so much energy that
Mhm.
I could relate to in the character of Daniel, that he just felt perfect for the part, and the rest of them as well. They each started feeling like they were right for the part, and they were the kind of this natural, uh, believable look
Mhm.
about Mexican society, Mexican, this generation of teenagers in Mexico today.
Yeah. One question: the language that Pedro speaks,
Mhm.
does it really not mean anything, or is it like Latin related, or what is he speaking? How did you write those parts?
It does have a meaning. It is, I mean, I could say it is a language. It does have rules, and it does. One thing I knew from the start is that I wanted it to sound similar to Spanish.
Yeah.
I wanted the sound. I didn't want to move into something like, well, something that was, you know, very different. I wanted it to sound like Spanish, so at least Spanish-speaking audiences would get the feeling that, oh, I didn't get what he said.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
realize I didn't get it because he didn't speak Spanish. But you know, it's like it happens when you hear when you go to a country which speaks similar language but not your language. So I wanted that feeling, because to me, what Pedro is doing is that he is sort of moving away from what he's told to do. He's rebelling against what he is told to do by inventing his own language, but he's not completely moving away. He's just taking one step back. And he's saying, if you want to understand me, you need to take a step closer. So Spanish-speaking audiences, even though they don't get the words of what he's saying, they do get the gist of it. They do get the feeling of what he means by the way he pronounces, by some of the words which are very similar. So I wanted to create that. So of course, taking Spanish as a base, I started adding new rules of how to construct sentences or how to transform words. So it does have a meaning.
You did really make up your own language a bit and then made a conversation from there.
Yeah, and I even studied books about language invention, you know, because there are people who do this in in television, in movies, in everything. They, you know, for Star Trek or Game of Thrones and all that. So people, Lord of the Rings, you know, these languages are invented for a specific fictional purpose. So I studied some of that. I read some of that in order to do something that would have a meaning, would have a structure, would have rules, and would still be believable. But also, I think the other challenge was to make it not so complicated that the actor would be struggling and getting blocked by trying to learn it or understand it. So I knew I wanted an actor who was very smart in that way of, you know, and I think Iñaki, he's very charismatic kid, and he's so outspoken that he just felt, the moment I saw him and I spoke to him, I thought, I think this kid can do it. And of course he could. Yeah.
Nice. Then my last question to you is, what is your next project going to be about? Do you have something, are you working on something already in these difficult times? Because that's another thing.
I'm working on something, and it's I decided to move completely away from Go Youth. This is something that I usually do when I finish a project. I run away to the other side.
Yeah, you know? You do the opposite.
Go Youth is exactly, or not exactly, but it's very, very different from my previous film, The Land of Silence. So I want my next project to be very different from Go Youth. But actually, the project that I'm working on right now, and hopefully we'll get to shoot it by the end of this year. I mean, things are looking good. It's actually something that I wrote about 18 years ago. The first draft that I wrote was about 18 years ago. And I sort of left it aside and got back to it, left it aside again, did other stuff. And I just felt that now, after finishing Go Youth, I went back to it, I rewrote it, and I started reconnecting with it. And I felt I'm such a different person now from the moment when I wrote it originally. But I think that has helped a lot, and I can see it with a completely new eyes. And people that I've sent it around to, it started to get a liking from a lot of people. So it's moving ahead. It's called, well, the title in Spanish is La Suerte de Juan, which in English would be The Luck of Juan. Yeah. And it's something based, it's a very hard tragedy based set in the 1930s in rural Mexico.
Okay.
So
Yeah, completely different.
completely different, but at the same time, it's still personal. It has a lot of personal things into it. So I'm really happy about that project. We're working on it, and it's moving ahead, and hopefully soon we'll get to speak a lot about that project too.
Well, good luck to you then, Carlos.
Thank you.
Well, is there something you would still like to say to the MOVE public that have just watched your film when they see this?
I mean, I would love to get the sort of reaction of the audience in Belgium, and or in Benelux area. I don't know. I feel I made this film wanting to speak a lot of things about teenagers and Mexico City, my country, my culture, and everything. But at the same time, there are these human emotions and reflections, which I believe are. I mean, it sounds cliche, but they are universal, and I just would like to see or get to know the reactions of the audiences about the sense of humor, about the characters themselves, about their engagement in the film, and what kind of reflection it leaves at the end. I did this film and I enjoyed it so much, but I knew that I wanted it to have several readings, and you can either see it from a very superficial reading. It's a funny film, kind of to pass the time, or you can dive deeper into it and really reflect on a lot of things. But either way, you can enjoy
your own adolescence as well.
Yeah. So anyway, I would like to see how people find it, and if they want to send a message, let me know. I really hope they enjoy it. I'm very thankful to all you at the MOVE. I'm really happy that the film is going to be screening there, and all the best for the festival.
Thank you so much, Carlos. All the best. Suerte to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.